Dark Souls is a game of constant decisions. Do I wear light armor and roll around a lot, or heavy armor to tank damage? Do I go for a strength or a dex-based build? Do I roll, block, or parry to avoid this attack? Almost every single decision in Dark Souls has one thing in common: stamina. Stamina management is arguably the most fundamental part of the game, so let's try to beat the game without it. The actual rules for today's run are incredibly simple. Anything that uses stamina is not allowed. This includes jumping, sprinting, backstepping, attacking, blocking, and parrying. There are 3 things that we can do that don't use stamina: casting spells, using items, and walking. So much walking. I make Noodle here into a pyromancer, so we have access to pyromancies, and pick the black firebombs as my starting gift because I wasn't confident that 8 casts of fireball would be enough to kill the boss. A sorcerer would have worked too, but you can pick up the sorcerer's starting gear and spells right after getting to Firelink, whereas the pyromancer gear can't be obtained until either getting into the depths or killing Quelaag. We just have to walk around the asylum, running past the asylum demon when we first encounter it to... Wait. I make Noodle 2 here into a pyromancer so we have access to pyromancies, and pick the black firebombs as my starting gift because I wasn't confident that 8 casts of fireball would be enough to kill the boss. Okay, let's try this again and not immediately fuck it up with a run. Walking past the first encounter with the asylum demon and a bunch of hollows, let's actually face the boss. And I think I was right to bring along the firebombs. I don't think I would have had quite enough damage to take it out with only fireballs, but luckily, firebombs do really good damage in the early game. After arriving at Firelink, we head down the elevator to buy the sorcerer's starting gear from Rickard. Soul Arrow does a little less than half the damage of Fireball right now, but we get 30 casts of it, making it a good choice for taking out early game mobs. Then I make a quick little suicide walk to the Firekeeper's Soul in New Londo Ruins. Proceeding through the Undead Burg, I run into a persistent annoyance of this run. Objects. I can't roll through them, so I have to burn casts or items to get past things like boxes or branches. I buy the Resident's Key and a shit ton of firebombs from the Undead Merchant. Then head over to Taurus Demon. Since we have neither armor nor mobility right now, damage is king. Black firebombs do significantly more damage than our fireball spell right now, and I have several left over, so I chuck them directly into the demon's face, then head over to the Hellkite Wyvern Bridge. Which, well, that actually wasn't awful. I make one more trip to the Undead Merchant to pick up the short bow. It's a surprise tool that'll help us later. Because our top speed is a leisurely jog, death to random mobs is agonizing, because it means we have to walk all the way back. Alrighty, gargoyles. They're weak to fire. Yup, that makes total sense. Between the basic fireball doing fantastic damage and the basic soul arrow being able to outrange the second gargoyle's fire breath attack, this is the easiest gargoyles fight I've had in a hot minute. Since I made the brilliant decision to not pick up the Master Key, we have to take a stroll through the depths. I made sure to pick up another piece of kit on my way down, the Force Miracle, and a talisman. We free Griggs, buy some biohazard waste, and chuck said waste over Capra Demon's garden wall, and stand around waiting for him to keel over. Gaping Dragon requires a bit more effort, not because he's particularly dangerous, but just because he has a lot of health. After a trip back to Laurentius and the Undead Merchant for more fire, we can deal with the Sewer Dragon. The spells run out unfortunately quickly, and oh god, is this what consumable only runs are like? This sucks. So little damage, and it's only gonna get worse as enemy defenses and health bars get larger. Next up is Quelaag. Obviously, pyromancies aren't gonna work here, and my int is really not where it should be by this point. I'd been trying to buy all the tools I needed for the run and neglecting leveling for the most part, and it shows. I straight up didn't have the damage on my first attempt. But I wasn't far off. Only a couple of easily obtainable levels, gotten from soul items around the bottom of Blighttown, and a teensy little bit of mob grinding, and actually being careful not to miss my shots was all it took to have the damage I need. Barely. Getting a couple body shots on Quelaag herself certainly doesn't hurt either. Luckily, Quelaag is one of the easiest bosses to deal with while just walking. For the most part, you can just stick to her side and be safe. Let's work on fixing that atrocious magic damage, shall we? The Bedling Dragon Crest Ring is a good start. Burning the butterfly to death gives a decent chunk of souls to spend on intelligence levels. Howl is weak to magic damage, relatively, and slow enough to kite up the stairs at a walk, making his ring easily obtainable. We throw fire at the wet rock, which of course is super effective, to free Dusk. Then kill Dusk, so we can get her gear that spawns at the back of the... wait. Why didn't her gear spawn? Ah, right, you have to summon her in first. Whoops. Well, if we can't go with magic damage... Well, if we can't buff our magic damage with her armor, might as well mitigate as much physical damage as possible. Right now that means the stone armor. And since we're already in Darkroot, let's go ahead and deal with Sif before heading up to Anor Londo. Yep, it's definitely for the sake of routing, and not because I am desperately trying to postpone having to deal with the funhouse in Ornstein and Smough. The much higher casting speed of sorceries over pyromancies make it the better choice for dealing with Sif here. The stone armor takes the brunt of the damage and allows me to situate myself under the dog and shoot magic missiles into her belly. Walking all the way through Sun's Fortress, avoiding snake men and magic and traps is awful, which is why I did none of that and instead just let the boulders hit me like a freight train as I walked up the stairs. Since I don't have the master key, we have to go pick up the cage key, which is right on the other side of this little gap of the bridge here. Yep, turns out I'm a massive dumbass and have locked myself out of being able to get like 80% of the useful spells. Luckily, we don't have any need for them, at least not for the Iron Golem. Although relying on pyromancies and their extremely limited cast does have some interesting consequences, but the actual fight goes smooth enough. Not much reason to even attempt to knock the golem off the bridge with relatively weak pyromancies, so we just bring him in onto the larger platform where gravity isn't a threat to us and firebend him to death. Here's why I bought the Force Miracle. Painting Guardians. They're a pain in the ass. Slightly less so when you can bully them off the ceiling. Ornstein and Smough. By far the hardest fight in the base game. Actually isn't that bad without stamina. Both the boys are weak to magic and fire damage, and Havel's armor can poise tank most of Ornstein's attacks. Once I stopped trying to avoid damage, the fight was trivialized. By just standing in front of Ornstein and ignoring his buddy while casting Great Soul Arrow, the first phase goes quick. The second phase isn't much different, though I did dip into my humanity after running out of Estus. Honestly, one of the easiest ways I've found to fight the boss, just stand there not giving a fuck and cast Magic Missile 20 times. I'm going to be starting with the easiest Lord Soul first, Nito. Well, the boss is the easiest, getting to it, not so much. With a little luck, you can strategically trip over the edge of a cliff to get down to Pinwheel quickly. With the hardest boss in the history of gaming done, we can go deal with the king himself. I've dealt with navigating this area in the dark a few times, but it'll never not be annoying. Nito's pretty weak to both fire and magic, but even if he wasn't, he's a massive pushover who murders his own ads like a moron. I forgot that I had gotten the Great Chaos Fireball from the Lady Chaos. I also forgot that it's honestly kind of ass. It's supposed to put down a damaging lava pool where it lands, but I don't think I've ever actually damaged anything with the lava, and the damage from the actual flame projectile is only mediocre. You're much better off using your attunement slots on later game pyromancies instead. In an effort to get the souls to get my pyromancy flame up to plus 15 so I can summon in Quailana, I head over to Ceaseless, who honestly might have been impossible without the cheese strat. He just has so much health and is immune to fire damage, so I would have had to try to squeeze 4,200 damage out of my little baby spells. I mean, it's probably possible, but it definitely would have sucked. That wasn't quite enough levels, so I went to deal with Gwendolyn as well. Big mistake. Between my snail-adjacent walking speed and the severely reduced lock-on distance in Dark and Orlando, I had time for a single attack before the spindly little shit warped away. I knew that his endless hallway wasn't actually endless, but this is the first time I'd seen it. It took over 15 minutes, but it was enough to reveal Quailana, which means we're free to go take down the Bed of Chaos whenever we feel like without losing her. That took so long! But we're not going to do that yet. First, we're going to be doing the archives to actually make use of our newly ascended pyromancy flame. The scariest part of this fight is trying to hit the damn crystal at the beginning. Free aiming is just so weird in these games with how much of an arc projectiles have. The Firestorm pyromancy is extremely underwhelming. Even against the Naked Lizard, it just doesn't do as much damage as it looks like it should. Not that it really matters. Magic is so broken in the first Dark Souls. Pyromancy doubly so. It's a real shame how much it got nerfed in future entries because of it. Alrighty, let's put the pyromancies away for a bit because they won't help us in Dante's Inferno. Well, okay, it actually would help against the Demon Fire Sage, because despite being literally on fire, he is also weak to fire. But I figured I'd get used to the sorcery casting speed since I'll have to use it for Centipede. I spent a while poisoning him, because I felt like it, I guess. It worked, but it didn't help. Unlike later entries, poison damage is a flat 3.75 damage per second for 3 minutes, so yeah, it's more or less useless past like the first boss. Centipede Demon is actually immune to fire, so Magic Missile it is. Yep, this is fine. Who needs to see the boss? Camera use is for casuals. Remember that bow I picked up at the beginning of the run? Yeah, time to use that for the most technically complex part of the run, the Bed of Chaos cheese. You only really get one chance to do this, so if you want to attempt this, either be prepared to get real good real fucking fast, or back up your save. From the base of the Bed of Chaos, stand on the 6th crack in the flooring. Using the aiming mode on the bow, aim a firebomb throw here, and here. Quickly walk forwards and pray to everything you believe in that the boss lets you get to the bug before it kills you with the firestorm. And it's finally time for the Four Kings. It's a real testament to just how busted pyromancy is that I can miss shots, get grabbed by every single king, and still not have to deal with more than one of them at a time. All without even having a fully upgraded flame. Havel's armor negates most of the damage from their sword swings, but does next to nothing for their magic ranged attacks, so just moseying on up to them and setting their knees on fire is the best way to stay safe. Now let's go ahead and finish this game. I'm not doing the DLC today, mostly because after 2 Dark Souls runs in a row, I'm getting a little bit sick of the game. Gwyn is yet another boss who is inexplicably weak to fire, despite using it himself. This fight ended up mostly coming down to luck. The first couple of attempts, he was really keen on just staying right in my face and spamming heavy attacks. Eventually, he kept his distance for long enough that I could actually get consistent damage and healing opportunities. About 3 hits with Fire Orb is enough to make him stagger, meaning that if you just keep pressing attack, you'll eventually get a chance to heal. And that was enough to be able to burn him to a crisp and beat the game. So, can you beat Dark Souls without stamina? Of course, just use magic. And poise. Lots of poise. But that's gonna do it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.